Hello, Namaskara. I am at the Indian Institute of Science, IISc Bangalore, to interview Professor Ashish Verma, a mobility expert.
Essentially, the city was a small city, a few decades back. But as soon as this IT boom and this whole industry came to Bangalore and settled here, 4 to 5,000 new vehicles, including car and two-wheeler, are hitting the road. That during the peak hour travel, how much a car occupies road space to carry one passenger versus two-wheeler versus bus.
So this odd and even number of, it doesn't work here, like how it was in Delhi.
Considering that it's a complex system, there is no silver bullet. But we have ourselves seen, the city has invested so much in the road infrastructure in last 2 decades. What is that we have achieved? And all this crisscrossing, as soon as you have a green signal, this fellow will come from this side, this fellow will come from this side.
So what is the solution? I mean, we're all into this blame game of, blaming the government or the people. Now, you tell me a solution as a mobility expert. We know Bangalore city has been, facing or plaguing, with mobility issues, sir. So what is the solution?
So, $1 million question.
Hello, Namaskara. Welcome to a Key Studio with me, Rithu Dravid. I am at the Indian Institute of Science, IISc Bangalore, to interview Professor Ashish Verma, a mobility expert from the Department of Civil Engineering. He also heads the Sustainable Transport Lab in the campus. So I welcome you to the
Thank you,
show, Professor. So we are here today to discuss and maybe to talk about ways in which we can decongest Bangalore city and find sustainable solutions to live in a metro city like Bangalore. So it's always a pleasure to be at the campus. So it gives me a feeling of being in an urban forest, free from pollution, free from, of course, the traffic congestion. So I welcome you on the show.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, sir. So how would you want to start off the discussion, sir?
Well, first is, of course, when you think about the city, Bengaluru, I've been here now for 15 years, my lab that I've developed on sustainable transport here. And over these 15 years, we have done extensive, research and understanding of the traffic issues in our Indian cities, and with a lot of focus on Bengaluru, being one of the major metropolitan city of the country, and of course the biggest city and the most important city in Karnataka, which of course generates so much of economic opportunity for people and invites and brings a lot of intellectual capital to this city, but has seen an unprecedented impact on the urban infrastructure, including transport and traffic system, and how it is getting strained. If you go to the fundamental of this, essentially the city was a small city, a few decades back. But as soon as this IT boom and this whole industry came to Bangalore and settled here, what we have seen is a sudden jump, not just in, of course, the population of the city, but also the wealthiness, because most of these jobs in the IT sector are high paid jobs. These are white collar jobs. It actually raised the per capita income of the city, or in other words the per capita GDP, and substantially improved the buying capacity, the consuming capacity of the populace here, which resulted in huge increase in car ownership. with these young IT professionals, getting fat salaries. It just resulted in too much of car ownership. And when I say the city was small, it essentially had very narrow streets. Even if you go and see the city center of Bengaluru, you don't have wide roads, like Delhi, for example, or even Mumbai, to a large extent. So the city roads were actually meant for a smaller city, but I guess the city didn't really had a smooth transition from a small city to a big city. It just kind of flipped. It just exploded from a small city to a big city without understanding the impact on the transport infrastructure, which was essentially meant for a small city or the travel needs of small city.
Right.
Yeah. And so over time what we have seen is that the road capacity being limited of a small city, but the travel demand increasing exponentially, that too on personal mobility modes like cars. Yeah. You saw a huge gap, huge mismatch between the demand and supply. The travel demand, the demand for people to travel, and the supply of infrastructure to satisfy or cater to that demand. That huge gap has led to this situation of traffic congestion. Okay. Now, what has been the kind of interventions that the cities have done so far? If you think about, we thought, let's try to expand the road network. Roads are narrow, of course, because roads were traditionally narrow, and this is a heavily built up area in the core city. It's not easy to expand roads. You need to break properties, acquire properties and so on. Yeah. So what to do? So the government, from one government to the other, thought that okay, let's build a lot of heavy infrastructure, like wherever road widening is possible, do it. Otherwise, build flyovers, build underpasses, have these elevated corridors, etc. But what that has resulted in, now you may say that yes.
So don't you think that's the only way out to accommodate such things?
What I think everybody has realized, and it is a globally understood situation, that these road infrastructure interventions have not proven to be sustainable.
Okay.
Sustainable in the sense, not just in solving that core problem or issue of traffic congestion on a long-term basis, but also resulting or adding to more fossil fuel consumption, and also more tailpipe emissions, more carbon emissions. So all in all, when you keep adding the road infrastructure, what you are essentially doing is you are encouraging more and more people to buy personal vehicles and use them, because you are trying to create infrastructure to make their movement faster. But in this quest, what we don't realize is that the travel demand, the exponential growth of the travel demand, especially on personal vehicles, is so huge. Okay, that rate of growth is so huge, that no matter how much of road infrastructure capacity that you will add is not going to be sufficient. So that's why what is happening is that these roads which are being expanded in terms of their capacity are getting congested in no time. Okay. The other part is that there is fundamental flaw with these kind of interventions. When you add new flyover or a underpass, it basically leads to some additional capacity on certain stretch of the road or the corridor. But then it also results in the difference of the capacity at the ends of these, flyover or underpasses and so on. So when you get into a situation where because of adding these flyover or underpass, you now have more capacity here, but you have less capacity there, or you have less capacity here. So then it's a classic case of bottleneck. And as soon as we are in the rush hour, during the peak period travel, where the traffic is only at a very high density, these bottleneck sections then create havoc. Okay, then it results in pile up of the vehicles, huge queues that get accumulated, and the releasing of these queues takes much more longer time, and the negative effect of that is that these queues then spill over back onto the same flyover or underpasses which were constructed to elevate congestion. So we completely defeat the purpose. So non-uniformity of road width along a corridor, road quality being bad, absence of use of road markings effectively, road signages properly, huge concrete dividers which makes the system and infrastructure more rigid to be flexibly used. These are all things that then add to the complexity and add to the chaos. Okay. So these are some of the fundamental issues, and of course if you add on to this the driving behavior, where I would say that our driver education and licensing requirements and regulations and the processes that we have currently in our country are highly inadequate to create drivers which are not just physically fit and competent to drive a vehicle, but they should also be safe drivers and environmentally conscious drivers. That is the need of today. Okay, but our current driver education and licensing system is actually failing in creating drivers which are safe and environmentally conscious. So that adds another dimension of complexity.
So there's a lot of disregard, towards traffic laws.
To the traffic laws. Even if you provide lanes, people will not follow lane. If you are at a signalized junction, somebody who has to turn right will stand in left. Somebody who has to turn left will stand in the right.
Particularly two-wheelers, trying to swerving, in between buses and cars.
In fact, we call it as gap following behavior. That they don't follow, to move ahead, they don't follow a vehicle in the head, they follow gaps. Wherever the gaps are there, they'll try to fill in and try to move forward.
And that's why you have tailgating, with cars.
Tailgating and all this crisscrossing. As soon as you have a green signal, this fellow will come from this side, this fellow will come from this side. Then it kind of slows down the discharge of the vehicles also. So you basically waste the handling capacity of that junction also because of this crisscrossing and so on.
So what is the solution? I mean, we're all into this blame game of blaming the government or the people. Now you tell me a solution as a mobility expert. We know Bangalore city has been facing or plaguing with mobility issues, sir. So what is the solution?
So $1 million question.
So
I always say that transport and mobility is a classic case of complexity, complex system. Okay, so complexity science or complexity theory are well suited to apply for this system. We as a common road user sometimes understand it to be too simple. Okay. And too easy for anybody to say that, oh, this can be done, that can be done, this is the solution, that is the solution. But in actual, we don't realize that there's so many multitude of factors that influences a situation or influences why a traffic is like that. Okay.
So the dynamics of congestion is very difficult to understand.
The whole dynamics of traffic congestion, the issues, its connection to emissions, public health, quality of life. There's so many dimensions. Land use. We see ourselves, how land use changes impact transportation and vice versa.
Exactly.
Today you have a big development, being opened somewhere. You will suddenly see the traffic mess starts happening around it. A big mall. Well, the best example is the Mall of Asia. Phoenix Mall of Asia. On this airport
creating
road.
A lot of traffic commotion outside.
It was such a havoc that emergency vehicles could not move.
It was closed down as well.
School going children got stuck in traffic for hours and days. People could not take out their relatives or for hospital, etc. It was such a situation. Your whole life gets to a standstill. So I mean, it's not easy. So land use definitely has impact. If you don't consider for it, if you don't account for it, then you'll only be doing patchworking at the end. So considering that it's a complex system, there is no silver bullet. Okay, that one single solution or one silver bullet would solve everything related to transport system. So when you think about solutions, it has to be at different levels. Okay, starts with policy and governance, then comes to the planning, the infrastructure, okay, then the management, and then also the behavioral and other, attitudinal and those factors. So there are layers of interventions that are required. Each layer has a bearing on other. Okay, if you, for example, directly try to jump to traffic management, okay, just like how traffic police has been talking about using AI and machine learning, to do better traffic management, but that has a limit unless you take care of the higher level of interventions and do it correctly. If you don't solve your policy and have your policy and governance correct, or your planning of infrastructure correct, then there is a little that you can do with traffic management. For any AI and machine learning to work effectively, you first need to have baseline conditions in place. Okay.
But don't you think the traffic department are on road to actually witness this chaos and commotions? Or
I know.
Example, road rage,
Correct.
And all that you spoke about.
In fact, they are the face of the system on the ground, and they have on ground ability to see. Okay. But as I said, since traffic is a complex system, okay, when you are on the road, what you can only see is how much your eyes can allow you to see. Okay, but this is a network, this is a system. Something happening somewhere else can have impact here. You do some interventions there, you block a road there, close the road there, do some diversion. You may see that the impact of that is probably reflecting somewhere else in some other junction, because the traffic is diverted. Now a person there, how much he'll be able to see that, oh, here suddenly why this has changed? Yeah. You will not know what's happening in the other part of the network. What has caused this thing? Yeah. So a systems approach and a network thinking is extremely important to take a complete city network-wide view. If you don't get that, then you are just seeing things or problems in isolation, which is why you keep coming up with these kind of solutions. That okay, here some traffic congestion is there, let's build a flyover. Let's build an underpass. Yeah, so these are like point-based measures which doesn't take a networked view, and because of which they tend to fail, because you only shift or convert the problem in some other way to some other junction or some other place. You actually don't solve it.
Okay, so what about construction of flyovers? Now we have 2 elevated corridors.
Yeah.
The old Madras, the airport road one, etc. So how do you think these are not of use, sir?
Well, the first thing is you have to see how long these solutions can provide solution to that given problem that you are trying to solve. Okay, say you think that a corridor has more traffic, there is a lot of traffic jam. Okay, and you come up with the idea that okay, let's build a tunnel road on this road. First you have to have a network-wide understanding that if you build a tunnel road here, how is that it's going to impact the network? Not just solving releasing the issue here, but how this will have cascading effect over the whole network. Second thing is how long this will sustain, how long this given road intervention, the tunnel road or road widened, etc., would serve its purpose. Okay, if you don't have this understanding, you are only shooting in the air. And what we have observed ourselves and the city has experienced is that these solutions tend to be not even 6 months or 1 year in their lifespan of effective intervention. You are seeing traffic congestion coming back on those stretches much more early than what they projected
initially,
while building these solutions. Yeah. So the longevity is a big question mark. Secondly, once you build these road interventions, you only make the movement of personal modes very easy. Now, we did an estimation through our research earlier that during the peak hour travel, how much a car occupies road space to carry one passenger versus two-wheeler versus bus. And what we found was that car occupies almost 8 times more space during peak hour travel in Bengaluru to carry one passenger compared to bus, and two-wheeler is almost 4 times. Okay, So this is the comparison of space efficiency.
Okay, now since you spoke about space and occupying, the vehicle occupying, road space, what about the travel time and, the speed, sir, at a peak hour?
Correct. So, and this is where, this whole TomTom index comes in picture, which basically relies on this travel time for a 10-kilometer stretch.
Yes.
And we are actually doing a review of this whole TomTom index methodology and trying to, bring our critique as to whether this is a holistic way of assessing. If you simply focus on this as a parameter, what you are missing out is if a city wants to invest more on public transport and people are traveling by public transport, including say metro rail services or other things, that would never come in picture when you estimate the travel times like this and try to rank cities on traffic congestion. Okay. And if you focus on only this parameter, which is nothing but the ease of moving, or in other words mobility. See, there are two basic terminologies that we use, mobility and accessibility. Accessibility has a more deeper and wider understanding. Mobility is a much narrower focus in term. Okay, mobility will only focus on travel time, or in other words speed. How do you increase travel time or speed?
Okay, because the average, I think, time spent by a commuter on the road is about 257 hours, and in traffic it's about 132. So don't you think that's a lot of time to spend on the road?
This logic will say that, oh, let's spend more money on building roads.
Okay.
Yeah, so that you can increase the travel time, increase the speed. So the travel time reduces. But we have ourselves seen, the city has invested so much in the road infrastructure in last 2 decades. What is that we have achieved? We are still, probably earlier we were not there in the TomTom list in top. Yeah, now we are in TomTom
blaming
list in top.
Inadequacy.
So what is that which is going wrong? There is something fundamentally wrong with these kind of interventions, which we are not able to understand, which I am trying to explain, that our car ownership levels per thousand population are much lower than the saturations being experienced by rich countries, which have now saturated in terms of their car ownership. If you take example of America, the car ownership there is almost 800 cars per thousand population. That's where it is saturated. Okay, Bangalore is hardly 200 cars per thousand population. Overall, our country average in India is hardly 25 cars per thousand population. So where is 25 per thousand population? Where is 800
per thousand? Yeah.
Okay. But at the same time, we are among the brightest spot in terms of the economic growth. Yeah, we are the fastest growing economy. Yeah, which means that our economic prosperity is increasing and it will continue to increase at a faster rate, which means our buying power will also keep increasing.
An increased population, increased volume of vehicle growth.
Absolutely.
So how do you balance
and we are nowhere currently close to the saturation level of 800 cars per thousand population, not even in the city, Bangalore. Yeah. So anything that you will add to more road capacity to ease out the movement of personal vehicles, we will only add more cars, because we have still not achieved the saturation level. So which is why, although we feel that by building more roads will solve the traffic problem and congestion problem and travel times will improve, it's actually not happening, because in that duration and time period, the rate of growth of vehicle population is much faster. We have also seen, if you take the RTO data, the vehicle registration data during COVID also, that has further increased the number of registrations of personal vehicles, because during the COVID time people were not comfortable using public transport.
What is the approximate calculation, doctor, now? I mean, sir, now?
Well, we are adding almost 2,500 to 3,000 cars.
Okay, only cars?
Only cars on Bangalore per day.
Per day, okay.
Per day.
So what about?
And equal number of two-wheelers, or probably more. So that's the rate of increase. So every day 4,000 to 5,000 new vehicles, including car and two-wheeler, are hitting the road. No matter how much of road capacity
is-
will add,
Okay.
today now
So
we
the
are
more
also
you're
talking
building
about
high capacity or density road networks,
it will get filled in no
it will
time.
get filled. With
It
no
will get
time.
filled in
Yeah.
no time. Yeah. And on the top of that, you would increase your fuel consumption, so your energy bill would increase. And we keep saying that India is not an oil producing country. The future of EV is still far, and there's still a lot of issues that needs to be sorted out. As more and more people use electric vehicles, the cost of vehicle, etc., is still a barrier. Yeah.
So what is the solution to this? What you're talking to me about, sir? About
Yeah.
multiplying the number of people buying vehicles. So it's just increasing. So what is the solution?
So the solution is you need to bring the car, you need to control the car ownership. Okay, so the first level of intervention at the highest, which is at governance and policy, starts from there. You got to bring policies and frameworks which would make it difficult to own and use personal cars. Okay,
Right.
but then you'll say, oh, do you not have a right to move? Yes, you do have a right to move, but then it's not that you have a right to move by your personal vehicle only. Yeah, it's you will be using a common infrastructure.
Correct.
Which is a public good, and every section of the public or citizens in the city have equal right over their movement. Yeah, so when the city authorities try to satisfy the need of every member of the public for their ability to move, yeah, and ability to access opportunities. That's why this term accessibility becomes important, which means that how easily you can access your daily opportunities, whether it is education, place of education, place of work, place of healthcare, etc., from any part of the city, how easily accessible through different types of transport modes these opportunities and activities are.
That's the reason why a lot of real estate owners and builders are focusing on the concept of live, work and play.
Yeah.
So all at one place,
Yeah.
so that you don't have to travel to school or to
Yes.
a hospital or to a mall. So
Yes.
everything is self-contained in.
That's obviously a very wonderful concept.
Yeah, but not all can
in
afford.
In general, it's like a mixed land use. See, one is of course, these are high-end gated communities, but in general, if government as a policy develop different zones as mixed land use zones, okay, where people can live and work in close proximity, what this will do, it will reduce the average trip length, average distances that you need to travel for your daily needs and daily commute purposes. Once those average distances are reduced, you can use a slower mode easily. You can walk or
Yes.
cycle, or you can use a public transport without investing too much of time in travel, because your commute distance is reduced. Yeah. So if for everybody their commute distance is less, it will also reduce the burden of having heavy large infrastructure like these elevated corridors or metro corridors or suburban rail corridors. You would actually not need these kind of heavy investments in infrastructure. Rather, people can live in a more self-sustaining neighborhoods and self-sustaining zones. Yeah, where, and of course, as I said at the beginning, if the number of vehicles on the roads are less and you have more people on walk, on cycle, automatically your exposure to pollution will also go down, because tailpipe emission will be less. Yeah, people will become more healthier, they'll breathe more fresh air. It will contribute to the overall improvement in the quality of life of every person, or in other words, the overall improvement in the livability of the city. Yeah, quality of life and livability are the most fundamental goal of development we should have for the city, yes, including what we do with transport system, because it has a huge bearing. With this deeper understanding, I have actually initiated an international research journal, okay, of whom I am the editor-chief now. Okay. We launched this journal in last November. It's called Sustainable Transport and Livability. It's only because of our deep understanding that how transport is so closely connected to this development goal of quality of life, livability, well-being, yeah, accessibility, equity, social justice, environmental quality,
A lot of factors.
disaster resilience. These are all factors so close. Health impact, yeah, better health and so on, yeah. So with this journal, we are hopefully trying to build more and more understanding and evidences of how transport can contribute to this, yeah. So same philosophy we have to apply in Bengaluru also.
And
When
you
you-
spoke about car ownership, and I interrupted you. Sorry for that. So you can just talk about that.
Yeah.
Because
So car ownership, now what do we do? Car ownership and usage both. Yeah. You have to restrict it. Now you take several examples. You know, if you go to say Copenhagen, yeah, there, you know, the lifetime tax that you pay on buying a car is more than 100%.
okay.
So you actually pay double the price of a vehicle to buy it. Okay, that's one example, yeah, of how you can create a deterrence for people to buy a own vehicle. Like in Japan, they will allow you to buy a new vehicle only when you can show a parking space in your personal property.
That's a nice suggestion to make even, you know, in metro cities
Yeah,
like Bangalore.
yeah, yeah.
So I see families
Likewise-
having 3-4 cars
Yeah.
and they don't have parking space.
Likewise, what China does in several of their cities, they only issue a limited number of new vehicle registrations in a year. They have capped
is
that
very
number.
good.
And yes, which is very good. And that also they auction.
Oh, okay.
So you throw money if you really want to buy. So it costs like a bomb. Yeah. So it's another way to deter people from buying.
Yeah.
Okay. Now what about discouraging people to use the personal vehicles? Okay. So you go to many European cities, you'll find that their city centers are all restricted areas for vehicles, personal vehicles. They're only mostly for pedestrians, cyclists, and public transport, routes that go into the city center. The rest of the city, so the whole city centers, vehicles are not allowed. Yeah. So you create a situation where city centers are a wonderful places for people to be socially connected, go around and do shopping, you know, have recreation and so on. Whereas you think about our city centers, yeah, you take Commercial Street or
Brigade Road.
Brigade Road,
Yeah, the
or
CBD area in general,
where
so.
you know everybody is struggling to occupy space. Vehicles and pedestrians are there just fighting with each other. It's such a chaos. Yeah, it's not a pleasant experience to be in those congested places where same
And that's
city
another
centers.
concern with public, they're not able to find legal and safe parking space.
Yes, yes.
Then
So
what happens?
And the interesting point is that if you provide more parking space in the city center, you'll only let more and more people bring their vehicles. So that's how these European cities decide that we'll keep it free of movement of personal vehicles. So it's a discouragement to use personal vehicles to go to the congested areas of the city, yeah, and rather use alternative modes, walk, cycle, public transport. Of course, they do introduce and maintain a good connectivity of public transport and these other modes to the city center. So you need to have those alternatives in place, of course, yeah. Likewise, you can increase parking, you can restrict parking spaces, and you can increase the parking charges. That's another way to discourage people to use. If you think about the road space and allocate a certain road space, good amount of road space or right-of-way space for pedestrians, cyclists and bus lanes, and reduce the spaces that you give for personal vehicles which are consuming more space to carry one passenger.
Okay.
Yeah, you are doing a more rationalization of how you should allocate right-of-way to modes which are more space efficient versus most modes which are less space efficient. So this is also like giving priority. Yeah. So when you give priority to these space efficient modes, that also adds to encouraging it more and more to use, and discouraging personal vehicles to use because now they are restricted to a more limited space of right of way. Okay. Yeah, you go to many of these European cities, Zurich for example, you go, or German cities. Yeah, within the right of way, you will have a very good width being given for pedestrians. Yeah, and then prime middle place.
But London is the most congested city in the world, sir.
Well, going by the TomTom
TomTom index. Okay.
That's exactly why I said that there is a fundamental problem with this methodology and just focusing on travel time on road as a way. Okay. It gives a very misleading picture. London also has a very excellent public transport system. Okay. So your commute experience through public transport doesn't get accounted at all in this whole traffic congestion index, which so you can say that the London is the most congested city, but does it really reflect in the commute experience? No.
No, is it?
Okay. Because as I said, by policy you should discourage people to use personal vehicles. So in a city, if more people are on public transport, walking, cycling, and these lanes are restricted for personal vehicles, they will of course be more congested and their travel times will be high. So if TomTom index is calculated for such a city, it will also of course show it to be very high, and will project that the city is very bad. But in actual, the picture is that more people are using sustainable modes. So this kind of narrow approach to assess and compare cities is problematic, because what it will only do is put cities in rat race of adding more road infrastructure.
Which will increase the
So if you actually see this TomTom index and go to the bottom of the list, you will see cities that are at the that are ranked as the least traffic congested cities, which are at the bottom. They are mostly all cities from America. Why? Because they have those are smaller cities. Smaller American cities will all fall in the lower bracket of the TomTom index. Okay, so their population is less. Cities are small and they have huge roads and everybody drives on vehicles. So their travel times are lesser for same 10 kilometer. In fact, those cities will not even have 10 kilometers to travel. Their average commute distance. So they estimate for what is the time taken for 10 kilometer and use it to do this comparison. So it's a flawed way of looking at it. So what you are essentially trying to promote cities, if they really want to go in this rat race of TomTom index, is build more and more roads, which is not sustainable. So that's not the way. That's not the way. So to look at it. So the bottom line is, while you increase and improve the attractiveness of sustainable modes like public transport, walking, cycling, you also need to ensure that these personal mobility modes, buying them and using them should become difficult, should become less attractive. That's a fundamental strategy that Bangalore has to adopt if we really want the city to be more livable and have better quality of life and have a more sustainable transport system.
So when you try to reduce that, sir, how do we make sure that we facilitate or enhance the public transport mode?
So this has to happen parallelly. While you make the use of personal modes less attractive, for city of Bangalore with the current population levels of more than crore population and the city size that we have gotten, the only way the city can survive in terms of public transport infrastructure is MRTS system. That is any kind of mass rapid transit system, whether it is metro or suburban rail. Now you already have a network planned for metro of almost 317 kilometers. You have a network of suburban rail planned for almost 150 kilometers. I think government of Karnataka should just focus on implementing this whole network of both suburban rail and metro. Once it is implemented, you will see that you will have a very dense spider web like network in the city, where you will have a lot of radial lines and circular lines, and you can transfer between radial and circular and different lines while traveling between any point to any point. That is what is required. So if you can bring a MRTS system within walking distance of any place in the city, that would be the point where you will see a huge impact and improvement, a sustainable improvement in cities infrastructure. But of course, buses would remain to provide a complementary role, especially for short length trips. putting the MRTS network, if you can, if you can give network level priority lanes for buses, it will substantially improve the reliability and travel times of buses onto the road network. Okay, so this bus priority on a network level, not just on one corridor, on one road or one stretch, etc., it's not going to work. It has to be done
exclusively for buses.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, people keep saying that, oh, where is the space to provide lanes? I will say, wherever there is 2 lanes for each side, you can easily, reserve 1 lane for buses. Okay, our thinking and notion of the space is very flawed. You only think in terms of what you see. That okay, there is one bus lane, one bus will come in 1 minute or so, yeah, and here the traffic is going and you have less space and so on, so why do you do like this? But what you don't see is that here the vehicles are consuming more space to carry 1 passengers. If you have a much more frequent buses on this bus lane, yeah, which will provide a better throughput of passengers, you will have much faster movement here and more throughput. At the end, what is our interest? We want to move maximum amount of people and goods from any point to any point. Yeah, not empty vehicles.
Right.
Moving empty vehicles is not our objective. Our objective is to move people and goods.
In large numbers.
Large, maximize it.
Yes.
And in the safe, efficient, environment friendly, etc. way. Yeah, that is the core objective. Yeah, which mode is used to maximize this passenger and goods flow is a matter of equilibrium, where you achieve a sustainability. Okay. Yeah, it cannot be individual's choice. It's not an expression of freedom. In America, it has become like expression of freedom. This is how they have seen, having a car and using car, and there they use big cars, so they call it as trucks. So it's not even SUV. Yeah, it's like trucks for them. Yeah, they call them as trucks. Yeah.
So this odd and even number it doesn't work here, like how it was in Delhi.
No, it can work.
It can.
It can work. It can work, provided you understand it and complement it together with other sets of interventions. See, the same thing I am telling you again, which I said at the beginning. There is no single silver bullet. You think that only odd even application will solve everything? No, that's also not going to happen. Yeah. Theoretically, odd even means on a given day your traffic should be half. Correct?
Yes.
Because it's theoretically but it didn't happen in Delhi. Why? Because if you don't have alternative to the personal mode on a day when people cannot use it because of odd even policy, then what people will do? They'll start buying 1 odd number car, 1 even number car. Okay, or do something else to or hire a even number taxi if that day even number is allowed, or odd even taxi if that day odd even is allowed. Yeah, so it doesn't result. It didn't since the public transport was not augmented and was not capacity rich enough to take this additional load of travel. People resorted to all kinds of alternatives, and that resulted in a very suboptimal impact and result of that odd even.
Yeah, and even in Bangalore we had this concept of carpooling.
Yeah.
So it didn't work. So it was again a lot of.
That's what I said. If you tend to do them in isolation without complementing it with other things that are required, it will not succeed and will not give you desired results. See, we tried these pop-up bus lanes on Outer Ring Road, but just doing on one stretch, on one section, and that too on a temporary level, is not going to work. And the fundamental flaw that happens is we consider these as right-of-way intervention, engineering intervention. We forget that you also need an operational plan to augment the bus frequency on these bus lanes. If you don't do that, then in Bhopal recently what happened was, after the new government came, they decided to dismantle all bus lanes. It's unfortunate step being taken by a government without giving scientific thought. So what has happened in Bhopal, that they created these bus lanes in the middle, created these right of way with rigid barriers on both sides, But on those bus lanes, one bus comes after 10 minutes or 15 minutes. So what they forget or fundamentally didn't understand, that you need an operational plan on those bus lanes. So if one bus is coming in 10 minutes, the actual capacity that you are offering on that bus lane is much lesser than the normal traffic. So it's obviously going to fail. So everywhere governments and local bodies fail to understand the concept of bus lane and bus priority in its totality. So they think that it's all about engineering intervention, but they forget that you need an operational plan of running buses. Then it makes sense. Okay, so if you do it in Bangalore on network level and implement this whole almost 500 kilometers of metro and suburban rail network, then you will see this city will change.
So how long will that take? So we're all talking about
Well,
sustainability.
it's all about, that's where the role of governance comes.
Okay.
If government has a clear understanding and a will, everything can move. But unfortunately, our priorities are mistaken and misleading or misplaced. And so we don't invest our focus on implementing these projects on priority, and rather just keep doing road infrastructure interventions, tunnel roads and this and that. Which
So it's only adding to the misery.
It's adding to the misery. And this, simply following, blindly following tom-tom rankings,
Right.
is also putting us in rat race of road infrastructure.
Yeah, because we're all misled, including me. Only
Yes.
after your intervention and you're talking about it.
So we are trying to
got
write a
know.
critique also of this whole tom-tom index and why this is not a good thing.
Yeah, I was going through that. So it said Bangalore is the most congested
I know,
city.
I know.
London is the number one in the world,
Yeah.
etc. So then I was just wanting to know
No.
if the data is right. Okay. So is there any message that you would want to share to the viewers or public in terms of sustainable mobility? Anything that you would want to educate the public?
So I think in terms of making public understand the importance of sustainable mode, I'll only say that it is extremely important and essential to improve their own individual quality of life. It is very, very connected and linked to their own quality of life. The earlier that you understand and then change your choices of how you travel, how do you choose your travel options, and also demand from government to do right things. Yeah, we'll all be in a false impression that everything will be
so
good.
many debates, so many discussions, so many talks, but nothing has been done.
So it's all because,
and we are all misled.
Correct. And
we are helpless.
Again, I want to say that mobility and transport is a complex system. We think that it's very easy and everybody has a point of view, but it's a very complex system. Yeah, you really need a good expertise to understand it.
So thank you so much for
My
your
pleasure.
time on this show, sir.
My pleasure.
And I'm sure you've given us practical solutions, and I think the public should engage themselves in also participating and finding solutions.
Yeah, because at the end it's going to impact
Yes.
their quality of life, as I said.
Right, as you said. So we will take this seriously and do as you say.
Sure.
And thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure.
It's been a pleasure too. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I am Professor Ashish Verma from Indian Institute of Science. I am speaking at a Key Studio, which is an English online YouTube channel. Please do subscribe and view it and benefit from its proceedings. Thank you.